comes to Naruto, there's a lot of incredibly legendary groups. There's the Akatsuki, the Seven Swords of the Mist, the Konoha 12, or 13, or 11, depending on who you ask. And with each and every single one of these legendary groups, we truly understand why they're considered legendary. The Akatsuki are some of the strongest ninjas who abandoned their villages and came together to kidnap all of the Jinchuriki, some of the other strongest ninjas in the entirety of the Naruto world, and they were almost successful. And it really wasn't until Konoha got heavily involved in taking them out that they became unsuccessful. The Seven Swordsmen of the Mist were said to be powerful enough to take down an entire country. And while we never really get to see them live up to that level of power, it does take Might Guy opening to the 8 gates to either kill 4 or 6 of them. Not to mention that individual members of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist that we've gotten to know throughout the course of Naruto have shown spectacular levels of power. And obviously, I don't need to go on about how the Konoha 13 contains some of the strongest people in the entirety of Naruto. I mean, they are the main characters of the show. But this doesn't mean that every legendary group in Naruto really panned out to be all that important. See, because while the Akatsuki, Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, and Konoha 13 did all get their time in the sun, there's another legendary group in Naruto that never really did. And that legendary group is the Anbu. See, pretty much throughout the entire duration of Naruto, we're told that the Anbu are the strongest ninja from whatever village they come from. And these ninja are so strong that they're hand-plucked from the regular regiments and put into the Anbu to undertake incredibly dangerous and important missions that regular ninja simply wouldn't be able to pull off. Because of this, the Anbu are usually assigned missions that revolve around reconnaissance in enemy territory, assassinations of key political figures from rival villages, and maybe more importantly than anything else, the protection of whatever Kage they serve under. See, because on top of being hand-picked ninjas from the regular regiments, the Anbu also respond directly to the Hokage, thus operating kind of similar to a Delta Force of some sorts, a private, highly trained, incredibly powerful army that can be mobilized by the person in charge of them, the Gokage of whatever village they live in. However, there's a big difference between perception and reality when it comes to the Anbu. See, because while we're told over and over and over again about how legendarily powerful the Anbu are, as any role in the Anbu is said to be a status higher than Jonin, the highest rank that a regular ninja can get, with Anbu Captain being the highest rank that a ninja can achieve, pretty much everything that we've seen from the Anbu throughout Naruto's history has been the opposite of impressive. And that's not to say that we haven't seen impressive people come out of the Anbu, because we have, and multiple times, but it appears as though the only strong Anbu members are ex-Anbu members, which has led to multiple memes of people pointing out the fact that the Anbu are one of the most overhyped groups in maybe all of anime, and are truly probably one of the greatest examples in all of anime of overestimated power. But why was this overestimation of the Anbu's power made in the first place? Was it Kishimoto's fault, or was it our perception? And if it was Kishimoto's fault, then where did it go wrong with the Anbu to make them seem so much more powerful than they truly were? And lastly, and probably most importantly as it pertains to today's video, how would I change the Anbu to make them match the perception that they were given in Naruto? Or would I simply just change their perception? We're going to be answering all those questions and more today, guys, but first, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to hear me talk about the ways I would change some of your other favorite anime guys, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Or if you just want to listen to me be overcritical about anime as a whole, go ahead and listen to my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you want to look like somebody who has critical opinions about anime, guys, meander on over into my merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime t-shirts, sweatshirts, and sticker packs known to man. So, the Anbu, one of the most memed groups in all of anime. And genuinely, who can blame the internet? When you introduce a legendary task force that lives in the shadows and takes on the hardest ninja missions there is, and then one of the first things you ever see them doing is jumping into a very visible and very purple barrier and setting themselves on fire, it's gonna be hard to treat that group with any semblance of respect. But the problem of the Anbu isn't just that they're not that strong, but also, for some reason, that we were all under the perception that they were the strongest ninjas in all of Naruto. But why did we believe that? What put it into our heads in the early days of Naruto that the Anbu were the true final bosses of this universe? Well, that thought got seeded into our head a lot earlier than maybe you even remember. See, there's not really a part in Naruto where the Anbu play a massive role. In fact, throughout the entire duration of Naruto, the Root probably play a bigger role than the Anbu, and the Root are just a subsection of the Anbu run by Danzo. However, we probably get more talking points about the Root than we do about the straight up Anbu. But before the concept of the Root was even introduced, we were introduced to a character in the earliest parts of Naruto that was tied to the Anbu from their respective village. And that person was Haku. See, well, the majority of us remember Haku as somewhat of a spiritual awakening. What a lot of us forget about Haku is that when Haku was first introduced into the story of the Land of Waves arc, Haku is masquerading as an Anbu member. But Haku's not an Anbu member. In fact, Haku isn't even a ninja. Haku, before he could even join the Ninja Academy of the Hidden Mist Village, hooked up with Zabuza. And Zabuza taught Haku everything that he knew about being a ninja. But Haku had an Anbu mask. Yeah, Haku did have an Anbu mask, but Haku wasn't given that Anbu mask by the Hidden Mist Anbu. See, Zabuza is a missing nin from the Hidden Mist Village, which is actually incredibly common because during the Blood Mist Village era, tons of ninjas left the village because they didn't believe in what was going on. However, because of this, there was an entire subsection of the Anbu created known as the Hunter Nin. And these Hunter Nin's jobs was quite literally just to hunt down missing ninjas and kill them, kind of like a general in World War I shooting his own soldiers as they try to retreat. So Haku took the mask from the Hunter Nin that came after Zabuza that they killed together, and thus Haku pretended to be an Anbu, mostly to trick Kakashi and get people off of Zabuza's scent. However, from this moment on, we associated Haku with the Anbu, and Haku as the first mini-boss of Naruto, a character so powerful that he probably should have killed Sasuke and maybe Naruto, has cemented himself as one of the strongest characters in OG Naruto. And thus that connection between that power level and the Anbu was created. And thus, from some of the earliest chapters of Naruto, we began to assume that all Anbu members are at least tangentially on Haku's level, which actually probably isn't inaccurate. In fact, assuming that all members of the Anbu, at least from Konoha, are somewhere around Haku in the Land of Waves arc level of power, actually might be an incredibly accurate description of how powerful your average Konoha Anbu member is. As at that moment, Haku is probably about as strong as a Jonin, if not a little stronger, which is more or less what you're going to be getting in the Anbu. And while obviously Haku and Zabuza were able to kill a Hunter Nin that was after Zabuza, this is because they worked collaboratively, and both Zabuza and Haku are high Jonin level threats. However, if you were looking for an Anbu force that was on par with Konoha's Anbu force, it's probably that of the Hidden Mist Village, especially the Hunter Nin, because while obviously your standard Anbu members there for Gokage protection, assassination, and reconnaissance, the Hunter Nin being entirely dedicated to hunting down rogue ninjas meant they had to be a step above in terms of power. And thus, in the early days of Naruto, really our only perception of the Anbu and how powerful they were was tangentially connected to Haku, and tangentially connected to the Hidden Mist Village. And thus, for the vast majority of Part 1 of Naruto, the Anbu are respected. They're a clandestine group of cloaked, masked ninjas that keep an eye on the world from the shadows. However, unfortunately, that level of respect couldn't stick around for long, as it became very clear to us that the role that the Anbu would take on during the Konoha Crush arc, specifically at the beginning of the Konoha Crush arc. And this is really the first time that we ever get to see the Anbu in any semblance of action, as both Anbu from Konoha and the Hidden Sand come into combat against each other and other ninjas. And it becomes fairly clear that the Anbu and the regular ninjas from the Hidden Sand are just really no match for even standard ninja from Konoha, as whether they're regular ninja or Anbu from the Hidden Sand, Kakashi and Might Guy pretty much walk through them like a hot knife through butter. However, the Konoha Crush arc isn't only a bad look for Hidden Sand Anbu, who by the way either cover their faces with a mask or very characteristic Oni masks, but it's usually Oni masks. As almost as if not to be shown up by the Hidden Sand Anbu, Konoha's Anbu also show a unique level of incompetence. Probably the most glaring example of this incompetence is a moment we've already talked about. Just as Orochimaru and Hiruzen are starting their 1v1 that would end up a 3v1, Orochimaru has the Sound Village 4 erect a barrier around him and Hiruzen so nobody can interfere with their battle. Now, this 4-person barrier is incredibly powerful. There's basically no getting in or out of it unless you're the Ten Tails. And even then, if the 4 people who erect this barrier are Hokage level or higher, even if you are the Ten Tails, you're not getting out of it. And yet, after this incredibly menacing and very purple barrier is formed around Hiruzen and Orochimaru, the Anbu that are supposed to be by Hiruzen's side, protecting him as that is their most important job, realize that a barrier is being formed around the person they're supposed to be protecting and try to get get to him. However, upon seeing this incredibly menacing and very purple barrier being erected, instead of stopping and being like, probably shouldn't touch that, they jump directly into it, lighting what is supposed to be some of the smartest and most powerful ninja in all of Konoha, the strongest village on Earth, on fire. But to be fair, not all of them jump into the barrier. Some of them stand next to the barrier for the entirety of Hiruzen's battle against Orochimaru, and they stand there acting as exposition machines, more or less just being a plot device that we pan to every single time something happens that needs an explanation that neither Orochimaru or Hiruzen would logically explain. And thus, now have we not only seen that the Anbu are bad at their job, but also are apparently colorblind to the color purple. But don't worry, after Hiruzen dies at the hands of Orochimaru, the Anbu are quick to sweep in and gather his corpse. And the disrespect for the Anbu doesn't even really stop there. While obviously one of the Anbu members jumping into a barrier and lighting himself on fire was embarrassing, their role really still hadn't been laid out for us. Like, sure, this wasn't a great moment, but they got caught by surprise. It wasn't until a little bit later in the Konoha Crush arc that we see Kabuto standing over a bunch of Anbu corpses that we truly began to understand what the Anbu are going to be used for. See, because yes, later on in the Konoha Crush arc, we see Kabuto standing over the corpses of a bunch of Anbu members that he's recently dispatched. And it takes Kakashi confronting Kabuto to get him out of the village. And in this moment, it becomes entirely clear what the Anbu will be used for the entirety of Naruto, as a way to show that bad guys are kind of strong. And this kind of makes sense. See, let's imagine for a second that you create this elite police force, but all of the members of this elite police force are cloaked and masked, so you can't really get to know them on a personal level. Now, we know as viewers and readers, if we see somebody with a cloak and a mask, that's a powerful person, but we're not connected to them because we can't see them. Now, if a bad guy wipes out 5 or 10 or 50 of these cloaked and masked elite police force, we're gonna be like, wow, those guys were strong, and he made them look super easy to kill. And thus, for the low cost of not killing any main characters and not having to draw any faces, you have established that a bad guy that may or may not have just gotten introduced is strong. It's a plot device, and it's an okay one, and therefore the Anbu that are dead around the feet of the bad guy are a measuring tape to see just how powerful that bad guy is. And then after we get to see all of the dead Anbu, somebody who doesn't wear a mask full time steps in to actually fight the bad guy. I hate to word it like this, but the Anbu are kind of just like a vibe check. The Anbu assuming this role doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it flies directly in the face of everything that we knew and heard about the Anbu, especially when you consider the fact that we've seen Anbu members operate at an insanely high level, the best example of which being when 4 Anbu members battled against the 3-headed dog of Pain during Pain's assault. See, we know that Pain has 6 paths of pains, and one of those 6 paths of pain is the animal path, which has the ability to summon a menagerie of different terrifying animals. And one of, and probably the most famous out of all of those animals, is a 3-headed Cerberus-like dog. Now, mind you, almost every summoning from the animal path is strong enough to go toe-to-toe with a giant toad from Mount Muabuka. We're talking about borderline manifested tailed beast levels of power, as Gamabuto, when he was turned into Kurama, was able to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Shukaku. And while there was a lot more to that fight than Gamabuto battling against Shukaku, that fight does allow us to slightly estimate how powerful a Mount Muabuka toad might be in comparison to some of the other really big things in the Naruto universe. All of this is to say that 4 Anbu members found themselves in a battle against an animal that's almost as powerful as a tailed beast. And they almost won, and they almost win because of 2 things: incredible teamwork and borderline insane elemental release ability. See, the first of these Anbu members to make a move against the giant dog releases a wind-style slash that is able to cut the legs off of the summoning animal. And having a wind-style ability that's so powerful, you're able to cut the legs off of something with close to a tailed beast amounts of power is wildly impressive, especially when you consider the fact that we don't know this dude's name. And then after Anbu member A cuts the legs off the 3-headed dog, Anbu member B decides to summon a 4-barbed trap that raises out of the ground and releases a massive amount of lightning release onto the 3-headed dog. Now, obviously, this ability does have some conditions. See, because the way that this jutsu works is that 4 pillars raise from the ground and shock everything within the capacity of that square with lightning release. And therefore, if technically you're highly mobile and fast enough, I guess you would be able to escape this trap. But mind you, this trap is big enough to encapsulate the entirety of the 3-headed dog within it, so good luck getting out of it, even if your Achilles haven't been sliced in half with wind release. Not to mention the amount of lightning release released through this trap appears to be on par with things like Kiri in terms of sheer output. And it's not like the pillars take a while to shoot out. The release of this trap and the lightning release that fires out of these pillars is almost instantaneous. But it doesn't end there, because Anbu member C opens a portal to another dimension that's apparently made out of goop, and he uses a technique known as Earth Release, Earthfall, which causes this goop-like earth to fall down into the 4-pillar trap, encompassing Pain summoning animal in mud, essentially. Anbu member B then goes back and turns the 4-pillar trap into a 16-pillar trap, which just turns this trap into essentially an oven bigger than the Hokage building, mind you, which Anbu member D then decides to fill with fire release so powerful that it's able to bake the mud inside of this massive oven into a biscuit the size of Gamma Bunta. It's so right then and there, it's made very clear that the Anbu member are truly on another level. And this kind of makes sense. I mean, think of the characters that we know that were in the Anbu. There's Itachi, Kakashi, Yamato, Fu, and Tsurune. Oh, and Sai. And while at some point or another, all of these characters are at least tangentially involved in the route, as we see in a filler arc about Kakashi's days in the Anbu, that not only was Kakashi at least briefly recruited into the route, but also Yamato was recruited into the route and existed in the route for a long time. So long that eventually Danzo tried to use him to kill Hiruzen. And thus Kakashi had to break him out of the route. And then we all know that Itachi was being controlled by Danzo to pull off the Uchiha massacre, and Sai, Tsurune, and Fu were just straight up in the route. But still, and even if we are saying that an individual member of the route is stronger than an individual member of the Anbu, these are 6 at least low Kage level ninja, all of which that hail from the same group. And therefore, one would assume that the group that they all tied their roots back to, no pun intended, would be filled with ninjas that would at least be able to hang with them. Because here's the thing, disparity in power on a ninja team is nothing new to Naruto. Kakashi was the strongest member on his team for a long amount of time. Sasuke was the strongest member on his team for a long amount of time. After Sasuke leaves, Naruto is the strongest member of Team 7 by far and away. But the general rule of thumb is that a rising tide raises all boats. And thus Naruto being on Team 7 made Sai and Sakura and Kakashi stronger. And I really can't say the same thing for Kakashi. In fact, it just kind of made everybody else on his team deader. But you get the point. A strong ninja usually isn't placed with weak ninja because that would just slow them down. And these 4 Anbu members that we see in the Pain Assault display a level of ability that would allow them to hang with the likes of the ex-Anbu members that we know. And yet scenes like these 4 Anbu members showing an insane amount of teamwork and elemental release are followed up by Obito in his rage form after Rin is killed by Kakashi, wiping the floor with like 50 missed Anbu. Listen, I get it. Obito is one of the biggest bads from Naruto. We're not gonna have him die at the hands of missed, nameless Anbu. But you're telling me a 13-year-old who just awoke his MS ability and doesn't really know how to use the wood release of the white Zetsu that's attached to his body is mopping the floor with 50 high-level Jonin? To which some of you are probably answering,
well, yeah, Nick, this moment is to show us just how strong Obito has become.
Which exactly proves my point. These Anbu dying at the hands of Obito are simply to show us that Obito is strong now, thus perfectly fulfilling the Anbu's supposed goal of dying to show that bad guys aren't weak. So how do you fix an organization whose sole purpose seems to be to die at the hands of bad guys to show us that they're gonna be a good fight for the good guys? Well, step 1, stop doing that. No organization that's Eastern Russian World War II cannon fodder is ever to get a level of respect that it deserves. And ironically, the strategies of the Eastern Front of Russia during World War II is the polar opposite of what we're gonna be doing to try and fix the Anbu. See, probably the biggest issue with the Anbu is that there's way too many of them. The Anbu are an elite, hand-picked team that only ever take on the deepest, darkest, most unsavory missions that regular ninjas couldn't dream of accomplishing. Why is there like 10,000 of them? I get that every village has their own Anbu. Tobirama created the concept and every village copied it because they saw how effective his Anbu were. And therefore, we're gonna see Anbu from all different villages. But if you really sit down and think about it, throughout the entirety of Naruto, we might see more Anbu than regular ninja. At least in a group capacity. Obviously, we see a bunch of ninja that show up as main or side characters, but I'm talking about additional characters, background characters that show up to pad the numbers of big battles. More often than not, those characters appear to be Anbu from whatever village they hail from. And a really good example of this is Obito's rampage moment. Why were 50 missed Anbu surrounding Kakashi and Rin? Listen, I fully understand that the mission of the Hidden Mist here was to seal Isobu and Rin and send her back to Konoha. But in order to make sure that Rin made it back to Konoha, they had to chase Rin and Kakashi all the way back to Konoha. And thus they had to apply a somewhat constant level of pressure to Kakashi and Rin. However, things kind of went haywire when Kakashi decided to wait and fight back against the Anbu. But here's my thing, why didn't they just use regular ninja? Where did these 50 Anbu come from? You're telling me the Hidden Mist, which is notoriously plagued by ninja running away during this time period, and to also very famously have an entire subsection of the Anbu dedicated to chasing after these fled ninjas, had 50 Anbu kicking around to chase 2 genin? I'm sorry, 1 chunin and a genin? Oh wait, it actually might have been a jonin and a chunin at this time. Regardless, they're both like 13. How is that a mission that requires 50 of your highest level shinobi? Because obviously Obito is gonna kill everybody on this battlefield, but everybody on that battlefield being Anbu from the Mist cheapens the Anbu from the Mist and kind of paints the Anbu in the Naruto universe like cops in GTA. That is to say that they're stupid, but it doesn't matter how many you kill, there'll always be more. And therefore my proposal is, instead of making the Anbu like cops in GTA, what if we made them like Max Tech in Cyberpunk? An incredibly elite police force that only ever shows up to the biggest and baddest problems. Not an endless army of faceless drones to throw at the big bad until one of the main characters or side characters shows up. If you're gonna tell us that the Anbu represent the highest level of ninjadom in the Naruto universe, treat them like that. Treat them like Cyberpunk treats Max Tech. See, because the Cyberpunk universe understands that the second that Max Tech is sent in, the problem is solved. That's why Max Tech is only ever really sent in to deal with cyberpsychosis. But because Max Tech represents this insane level of ability, they are rarely ever seen. And that's what the Anbu should be. Powerful, but rarely seen. Because that's technically exactly how they're pitched. But you're probably saying,
Well, Nick, if this elite police force exists, then what do the main characters need to do?
I'm not telling you that the Anbu need to take on the role of the main characters of the story. What I am saying is have the Anbu show up way less often, but when they do show up, they do good things. Don't have the Anbu kill Nagato, but have the Anbu respond to the crisis of Nagato attacking Konoha and have them take down one of the Paths of Pain. Kind of like they kind of did during the Pain Assault, except scale that out beyond just one summoning creature to one of the Paths of Pain. Because, mind you, while they all did really cool moves against the three-headed dog, the three-headed dog just breaks out of the biscuit. See, the biggest and most important roles for Anbu are infiltration, assassination, and protection of the Kage. And what's good about that is the majority of those roles happen off screen, so there is always a baked-in excuse for the Anbu not being around, which is why they would have the ability to be incredibly scarce throughout the story, kind of like Shino during the Sasuke retrieval arc. See, because many would make the argument that if Shino had appeared during the Sasuke retrieval arc, they would have gotten Sasuke back. And one could make the same argument for the Anbu if their presence meant anything. And therefore, when the Anbu do show up in the story, it's a big deal. But the Anbu don't show up dozens at a time like they do in Naruto. The Anbu should show up exactly like they showed up during the Pain Assault, in a group of 4. Specifically, in a group of 4 Anbu members with iconic masks, or just iconic looks. Like Yugao, the purple-haired Anbu member. And while Yugao's Anbu mask isn't anything special because of her purple hair, we know who she is. But it doesn't even have to be that complicated. In fact, we don't even need names for these Anbu members. But if we have a reoccurring squad of 4 that appears at the most serious moments of Naruto, we can be like, oh, the Anbu's here. And when these characters that we now identify as the main force of the Anbu appear, we understand, oh, the situation is serious. That is to say that Konoha identifies the situation to be so serious that the Anbu needs to divert whatever they're doing elsewhere to be here now. But I can already hear what you're saying.
But Nick, Kishimoto already forgot about side characters with names whose faces we see.
And you're right, there are tons of characters throughout Naruto that are absolutely forgotten. Shino, Tenten, Kiba, Ino, the list goes on. So to assume that the story would find time to involve nameless, faceless characters is kind of a stretch. Except for when you consider the fact that the Anbu are all throughout Naruto. The Anbu appear way more often than Tenten or Kiba or Ino or Choji or Shino. And on top of that, the Anbu are talked about in positive regard for the majority of the story, which is not something you can say about the majority of the Konoha 13. On top of that, I'm not asking for backstories or development or even names. What I am asking for is that bad guys, as they go to attack Konoha or really any other village, have a somewhat mental timer or begin to sweat over the concept of the Anbu coming back to Konoha or whatever village they're attacking. And therefore, as we see these bad guys planning their plans around the possible presence of Anbu, it gives more respect and credence to the power of the Anbu that we've heard about. And thus the Anbu are kind of treated like having 5 stars in GTA. You want to get out of Dodge before you hit 5 stars, because by the time you hit 5 stars, you may not get out of the mission. And thus the Anbu don't even need their own fight. The Anbu could simply show up and act in a support capacity. Like during the Konoha Crush arc, the Anbu, instead of standing by Hiruzen's side as he died at the hands of Orochimaru, could have been been working actively to break the seal of the 4-person barrier. Or Kishimoto could have wrote it so the Sound Village 4 were able to erect that barrier and then leave, and therefore the Anbu could have helped in the battle against the Sound Village 4 during the Konoha Crush arc. Or they could have acted in a capacity very similar to what they did during the Pain Assault. However, instead of battling against Nagato's dog, they battled against Orochimaru's 2-headed snake. And there's actually kind of a precedent for this. See, because when Sasuke and Obito pull up on Danzo after he flees the 5 Kage summit, Obito realizes that Danzo's right and left hand man, Fu and Tarune, need to get out of the way so Sasuke can battle against Danzo. And thus Obito pulls Fu and Tarune away from the battlefield and battles against them. And therefore Fu and Tarune, root members, battle against Obito, one of the final big bads of Naruto. And they do pretty well considering. In fact, Obito has to cut off one of his hands to make sure that he doesn't die at the hands of Tarune's Rinkaichu. And that's really all I'm asking for when it comes to the Anbu. Identify within the capacity of the story that they're a threat to a main character's goals. As in this moment, they were identified as a threat to Sasuke's goal of killing Danzo, and thus Obito had to separate them from Danzo. That right there is an establishment of their power, and then give them a somewhat good fight against one of the big bads, but you can have them lose in the end. But do that with members from outside the root. Do that with members who still have their masks on. Because like I've already stated, the only Anbu members who ever get any respect are people who leave the Anbu. And what's crazy is that it could be even simpler than this. You could simply just show us through little things that the Anbu are in fact powerful. It's not that the Anbu have to win, it's just that the Anbu have to show up at key moments to make sure a situation is settled. I mean, this is kind of how characters like Kotetsu and Genma and Alba are treated. Kotetsu is the guy with the bandage over his face, Kotetsu is toothpick guy, and Alba is the guy with the sunglasses who battles against Kisame. But this example of Alba showing up in a battle against Kisame is a perfect example of how the Anbu could be used, as these three, while they never win any important fights, show up in crucial moments to support side and main characters, or to make sure that crucial plot points happen. And therefore, if you wanted to find a low-key moment to have the Anbu show their importance, maybe after Jiraiya's battle against Nagato, you have the Anbu sweep in to clear out the 6 paths of pain. Not to kill the 6 paths of pain, but let's say that after Jiraiya has been impaled by a bunch of chakra rods and is definitely gonna die, maybe instead of burning a message into Fukakusu's back, the Anbu show up because Tsunade was actually so worried about sending Jiraiya alone that she decided to send reinforcements. However, the Anbu get there too late, and instead of saving Jiraiya's life, they're able to back up the 6 paths of pain so that they can recover his corpse. And after recovering the not quite dead yet Jiraiya, they retreat. And thus in this incredibly simple moment, you establish the fact that the Anbu were able to back up the 6 paths of pain, accomplish a goal, and recover Jiraiya. All at the low cost of not burning a message into Fukakusu's back. And on top of all of this, you get less people screaming about how Tsunade was a bad Hokage for sending Jiraiya alone. And this is probably the most aggravating aspect of all of it. There's so many minor ways the Anbu could be shown to be important. None of them require extra arcs or extra characters with backstories to be fleshed out. We just need to stop treating them like fodder measuring sticks, where bad guys' strength is measured on how many Anbu corpses they can stack. And instead, they need to be treated like some of the most iconic side characters in Naruto, like Alba and Genma and Kotetsu. Characters who show up in crucial moments and have gotten respect in the Naruto community because of their strength. And it's not like any of you had all 3 of their names memorized like me. Therefore, not seeing the faces or knowing the names of these 4 Anbu members who would represent the strength of Konoha's Anbu really would not only not be the end of the world, but also wouldn't be anything new. But what do you guys think? How would you improve the Anbu in Naruto's universe? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now for extra brownie points, what's the name of the guy with incredibly pronounced veins on one side of his face? Tell me in the comments.